Welcome to Strictly Ball Business. I'm Alec. This is Dalton. We're talking National Basketball Association, baby. Here in the town of LeBron James, in the minds of Damian Lillard, in the limbs of Paul George. We are there, and we are ready to give you the business. Today, we're talking about a couple of hidden gems in the league. One of them, Max Strus, and another, Cam Johnson. A couple different conferences that they play in, but two teams that have been the number one seed for a lot of this season in their respective conferences. We're also going to talk about who's the dark horse teams in the East and in the West. And then we're going to talk about the play-in tournament, how it benefits small market teams. So first off, we're talking hidden gems, and there is no one brighter than Max Strus. I mean, look at that smile. Just beautiful, gorgeous smile. But besides the dashing looks, he shoots 40% on threes from 6.5 attempts in just under 23 minutes a game, basically, which is crazy because the year before he had only shot like 3.5 attempts. So stepped it up a lot. He obviously his minutes have gone up a lot over the years, but the percentage on the three this year, huge jump. And you're seeing a specialist being able to help this team be great when a guy like Duncan Robinson isn't playing as great this year as he could. And it's just more, hey, they're able to bring a good guy up here through their culture. And it was a guy who was on the Bulls before. So, someone else's garbage became their own treasure.
Yeah, he's really stepped up. They were hit really early with that COVID bug earlier this season, showed a lot of minutes for Max Strus, and he just kind of showed out. During that time, you had to be at least averaging 20 points per game, and a lot of it is due to his shooting. They needed him to step up, and he really did, and it's just a diamond in the rough, very much like a hidden gem, and he's a huge piece. It only makes them deeper in what they need to do, and they certainly need shooting around Jimmy Butler and Bam. So he's just so complimentary to this offense that it's hard to lose him now that you have him up to 26 minutes a game too.
He's a cheap guy. You look for these types of, cheap contracts that can give you this type of value in high minutes like that. He's getting 3 rebounds per game. He hustles. He gets the ball back out to the 3-point shot so that they can pass it more around to other guys and maybe back to Max again for a 3. The guy is active. He is eager to grow within this team, and I definitely see him getting more minutes next year, possibly. And in the playoffs this year, shooting is super important. So he is gonna get minutes, no doubt. Probably over guys like Duncan Robinson, or just whoever he has a hotter hand than, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's the playoffs. As you ride who's ever hitting their shots. Joe Harris, perfect example. He's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league in the regular season, and just had to get benched because he couldn't hit his shots. And that's a huge part of this. I'd like to see him get integrated into the offense a lot more, actually, as of next year. He gets very little touches. His turnover ratio is very small. It's small enough where you can't really compare it. He gets 1.4 assists versus 0.8 turnovers. So normally people would take that. I just don't think he handles the ball as much. He's not integrated into making the plays. He was.
Yeah, during
he's
that
COVID
their 8th
time.
option,
right?
Type of thing. So it's like when he gets the ball, his role is to make sure you're open for a 3 and shoot it when you get the ball.
Yeah, and hyper efficient in the role he's given. I'm super excited to see what else they'll have him do. And in the playoffs, that's the biggest stage. If you can do it on the playoffs, that's how you get a contract,
Yeah, facts. And he's 3 years into the league now, so I think he could probably even get a contract, in the offseason, if not next year. I'm not familiar with his contract situation, but I assume he doesn't have more than 2 years on his deal unless he signs something this year with them.
Yeah, I can look at this guy. But he's only 25. He's younger than Cam Johnson, actually. So he's got plenty of time. I'm sure. I thought
he's got an opportunities to get better, as a passer, get more integrated in the offense, and maybe develop some more skills. But bottom line, you have this grade of shooting on that high of volume, 6.5 attempts, 3 per game. That's already a great skill you can build upon. I know he can rebound. He's got good hustle, so he's got a couple of solid skills, and maybe could be a decent enough defender to keep himself on the court as well.
Right. Yeah, he has a 2-year contract. It's about one.
Okay.
This year he's making 1,600,000. Next year, 1,800,000. So he's got another year with the Heat at the very least, unless he gets traded. So
If they were smart, they would try to extend him this offseason and try to get him to take less than, if he plays even better next year in a bigger role.
Yeah, I can see him getting a shooter. I like to call it like a shooter's premium contract, where it's around 8 or 9 million for like 2 or 3 years with a team option. That's really what you pull. These contenders can afford, and that's what you pull in. It's a high mid-level exception type. So he can definitely get that money. I think if he keeps this up, especially the trajectory he had when everyone was out.
I think obviously he wants to get a longer contract than that, so we'll see if he holds out or something. But regardless, worst case scenario for the Heat, he plays like really well. Again, next year they throw a second round tender on him. Nobody touches him for that, or whatever. You can still put tenders on players, right? Or
I don't know.
Maybe a qualifying offer. I don't know. I'm getting the scores mixed up. But yeah, that's Max Strus. Gorgeous shot. He always gets open and is a hustler for this Heat team. We are Strictly Ball Business. We're moving on to hidden gem number 2, Cam Johnson. This guy, he is obviously was a first round pick, so it maybe wasn't such a shock for him to be a good player. But regardless, the improvement is worth noting. He's returning from injury this week, so he hasn't played in a few games. But before then, he has shot 45% on 3 this year. And last year, it was only 35%. Rookie year was 39%. But the main point is the volume has gone up to 6 attempts per game, and he's still shooting even better than he ever has before.
Oh, yeah. Almost three three-pointers made a game. Shooting splits of 48, 45, 87. Incredible. What's really incredible is his field goal at 48. I know it doesn't sound impressive, but he has 65% of his shots are coming from 3. So if you know much about math, like that's gonna skew it, and that's really over half his shots are coming from 3. So typically it'll lean down more into like closer to 40%, but
because like 40% is good for the 3, but obviously not for your total. But he's got a whole 7 plus % higher than that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think the biggest part is it's kind of hard to see as a Timberwolves fan. I mean, you traded away 2 good players to get a lot worse of a player. Jarrett Culver for Cam Johnson and Dario Saric was the trade. It's probably the worst.
So we can look at everything with retrospect. I mean, at the time, like Jarrett Culver was a top 5 prospect in that draft, and Cam Johnson wasn't.
True. I don't know if he was a top 5, but he was supposed to be the best defensive player in the draft. Is why because they drafted for fit rather than skill at that time, which was fine. I was a fan of the trade at the time. I didn't think Dario was going to be much. Granted, Dario's been injured a lot, so I don't know how much they're missing out on him. And he's basically just their backup big at this point.
I do know the Timberwolves really wanted to get Darius Garland in that draft too. They traded up, and then Garland went the pick right before them to the Cavs. They didn't necessarily think that was going to happen because the Cavs already had Colin Sexton, and it seemed like not a good pairing to put them together.
Yeah, Darius only played 4 college games before getting drafted.
So I definitely think the Timberwolves expected to take Garland there, and then they ended up taking Culver. But anyways, this video is about Cam Johnson, who did end up going to the Suns. He's ended up on a much better situation than he would have been with the Wolves. Probably in terms of his development, wouldn't be where he is today. Maybe gets traded if he isn't on the Suns. But instead, he gets time to grow with these guys. He's been alongside DeAndre Ayton, who's come up as a young gun next to him as well. He's got Chris Paul mentoring him, Devin Booker, one of the best leaders in the league. Solid team for him to end up on, where he's got low pressure. He's like the 6th scoring option probably on that team.
He's not that high. I wouldn't say he's a scoring option, really. He's just really just a very good flop. He's option, maybe one of the first options for a floppy, which is usually one of the best plays where you just swing people around for a 3-pointer. He's great. I mean, he adds so much versatility to this offense. I mean, you can switch out. He's not the starting power forward or small forward because Mikel and Jay Crowder go up, and because both of them are better at defense. But he's not the best. Yeah, he's not the best defender. He's not the worst. I think he fits in well with the team defense. It's just like, obviously he's a different specialist than Mikel. If they need a shot, they're going to come to him because he's one of the best catchers. I mean, most of his offense, you can take this as an up or a down, is all off ball. He's got, where is it? 60% of his shots are from the 2-pointer, from 2 points are assisted. I think 98% of his 98% of his threes are assisted. So, I mean, you can look at it as like, great, he plays off ball, perfect in the system. However, like, if the Suns ever get out of this Chris Paul big three and they ever move on or he gets traded, you'd like to see him take more shots on his own. Just right now, I don't think it's knock against him because it's obviously he's not, because they have a system that works. So he's great in his role. Perfect. He's super scary to watch in the playoffs. I remember the Bucks. Every time he put that ball up, I was like, oh, it's over with. And to be that young, 26 years old, and have that.
Yeah, he's extension eligible this offseason as well. What would you give him for a contract? Would you give him an extension?
You see, I think if he was on another team and he had a higher role, he could get a lot more money. But in the role he's given, I think I'd give him a 4-year, $12 million with a team option on the 4th.
Yeah, I just
14 million.
I don't know if I would want to lock myself into that if I was Cam Johnson. I mean, he's showed so much more improvement this year. Why would you not bet on yourself again?
Right. That was from the team's perspective. If I'm looking at him at what the player's worth, and that's not team's perspective too. I guess I was just outside looking at. I'd say looking at him, he's worth 12, 14, and that gives him enough time to grow. 4 is just more 4 years, obviously. I don't know. It's tough.
Are you saying 12 million per year or total?
Total. Not total. Per year. 12, 14 per year.
Per year makes more sense. Okay. Because, I mean, I think that makes sense for both sides. I think total, it just made no sense because it was like, $3 million a year for Cam Johnson.
Yeah.
A lot. But
so like 48, 50 for a year.
I think that's totally reasonable, and they should probably pay that because, hyper efficient player you've seen grow. He's only been in the league 3 seasons. Like, you can assume he'd probably get better. And being around Chris Paul some more can only help him. And who knows, like maybe they do end up losing Michael Bridges at some point, or
Jay Crowder's. Oh, Jay Crowder's old, so eventually
somebody's got to fill the Jay Crowder role for sure. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's an immediate one, and the Suns want to extend their contention window as long as possible, especially when Chris Paul's gone. So you keep the talent you got in house because you're gonna have to pay these guys regardless. Like, they need to pay DeAndre Ayton this year. Like, I hope they've seen enough from that just to do it.
Yeah, especially last game yet.
Yeah, they've already paid Michael. Chris Paul's contract will be up in 2 years after this, and then, I mean, Devin Booker's on a max too. So
yeah, I mean, it's just really nice. This young kid's about to see a second finals, I really think, and I think it's just a great experience. I think he's going to be in this league up as long as he wants to. I think he's going to be in it up until he's going to retire. I think he'll always have a role.
Yeah, so taking his stride. These will probably be his only opportunities to make it to the finals, just in terms of how a typical career goes for a role player. But who knows? But for now, he needs to just relish in it and enjoy it, and take advantage of it because he was great last year, and this year the Suns can take it home. They can finish it out this time. Oh yeah, definitely. They're my favorites to win the championship. So. Yeah. And I'd like to see him with a ring. If you get a ring this young, then like I said, you'll forever have a place in this league. So many teams will want a veteran that has proven they can win, and he's obviously going to be a main part of that ring if they win it. That's true. People will put a lot of emphasis on that. I mean, Trevor Ariza has had a job for years. Yep. He's been a decent shooter for years, but I doubt he gets the same love if he didn't have those great postseasons earlier in his career. Yeah, 100% agree. We're gonna move on. We just talked a bit about hidden gems here. We're now gonna move on to our dark horses. We're talking in the East. who is your dark horse that you think can have a legitimate shot to maybe make a run to the finals this year?
Yeah, of course. So dark horse, of course, is that guy who's sits outside of the not expected one to win the championship, but who we think could win the championship. So like you got to look at the contenders first. So Bucks, obviously a contender. In order, these are my contenders: Bucks, 76ers, the Heat, Nets, and the Nets. So I think there's only 4 real contenders in the Nets. In the East. From what I've seen from the Bulls recently, I don't think it's them. My dark horse is Boston. I know right now it's kind of a weird thing to say.
I just don't think you can call them a dark horse anymore.
So I think
they're the number 1 seed in the league now.
And
like
obviously they're the best defense. They just had a major injury. He might be out. Their starting center might be out this whole year. And just because they've gotten hot at the end of the season does not mean all those struggles they've had have gone away. They're still missing that elite playmaker.
Sure it does. They've been dominating it.
No, I mean the Magic 3 years ago were the most dominant team. They were the best defense. They finished the season. They bumped into the 7th seed. This is when they faced this is when Toronto won in 2019. And granted, they were a lot worse of a team. I'm not, but there's still all these holes where I don't think I still wouldn't think that they're a front runner for contenders to win. Especially with this last injury, they're still my dark horse. I think they certainly have a chance. They're young players. Tatum's on that Giannis storyline where nobody thinks he can do it, nobody thinks he can win, and that's the step he's missing to become a full-on superstar, Hall of Fame type player. And I think he could do it. I'm not sure about. I still don't know if they can do it without that elite playmaker. Him and Derek White have stepped up, and they've stepped up, and they realize that they have to get better at their playmaking, their assists, and watching for the open man like that. And they've both stepped up. More Tatum than White, because White's always just been a good playmaker. But they've certainly tried to fill that role. We'll see if Time Lord comes back. If Time Lord comes back, I don't think they can do it.
If he doesn't come back, you mean?
If he doesn't come back, I don't think they can do it. And if he does,
that's a huge piece for them. They need him back. I don't think he's out for this season.
Fourth best player.
Pretty sure I saw he'll be back in a couple of weeks, so I'm not too worried about that.
They're waiting until after his surgery. He's getting surgery, and then they're saying they're not going to have a timeline until after they see how the surgery goes. So that's at least a few weeks, at the very least. So he probably won't see anything until like the second or third round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Celtics, you probably don't want the 1 seed. You should maybe fall back a couple of games anyways, because I don't know why you would want the Nets in the first round.
Yeah, Nets are pretty scary to be in the first round. However, they have their own share of turmoil that's going on. But
now you got to face Kyrie each game in the series, which you didn't think you were going to have to do before. So.
Yeah, however, they are the best defense in the NBA. That much I think will always hold up.
Yeah, defense does carry over.
So I think they are one of the better teams, better suited to face the Nets in the playoffs. I think more teams especially with Robert gone, you're going to want to miss out on Bucks. You're going to want to miss out on the 76ers with those dominant bigs and Giannis and Embiid. I think you'd like to obviously see the Bulls. I don't think the Heat would go well. I think the Heat would be probably the best matchup for them. I mean, in skill to skill. Wise matching that up. I don't know if they could pull that out either, but it's tough. I mean, that's why they're my dark horse, because we look at them and there's so many other teams we think they can get beat by.
A lot of teams. I mean, I could see them beating those same teams. So there's 2 sides to each coin. I am going to tell you my dark horse, and they are a legitimate dark horse. It's a team with championship experience, pedigree, and they are the Toronto Raptors at 43-32. They're on an 8-2 run this last 10 games, so they're looking great. Siakam's looking real good, by the way, dropping 40 points last night. So this is a team that, doesn't have as much star power as some other teams, but their roster is deeper than most. It's deeper than the Celtics. It's deeper than the Nets. It's deeper than the Sixers. It's probably not deeper than the Bucks or the Heat. But I mean, I could see them winning a 7-game series against a lot of teams just because They have been there before. Fred VanVleet has taken another step up this season. Pascal Siakam looks like himself is old. If you remember, last couple postseasons didn't quite look that way, or at least last year. I expect these guys to make a big leap this year and maybe shock some people, kind of all the Atlanta Hawks did last year. Because why not? Why can't the Raptors? I think they got plenty of talent. Scotty Barnes is an X Factor type of player, and they can make a run.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to put on the shoulders of Scotty Barnes because he's a major part of why they're good, defense and playmaking. I mean, I hope he can handle that burden. I think injury is a lot of it. VanVleet been great this year, very inconsistent with the injuries. He sits out a lot, always has small pains here and there. That's a huge part. I mean, they do have. I don't think they're deeper than the Nets. I think the Nets are the deepest team in the East. But I don't think they could get there. I just don't see. Not this year. I do like the core of OG. I think OG can guard anyone in this league. Scotty Barnes, I think he still has a couple steps to make before getting to a championship. I think Pascal's obviously going to help out any team he's on. I think he's a major part. VanVleet, when he shows up, he'll be fine. I would just like to see a more polished scoring option, as VanVleet is very good. He can be very hot. He's also, there's some nights where he'll only get like 12 points, So I'd like to see a little more consistency out of them. Is it possible they make it to the finals? Yeah, it's possible.
They're a dark horse.
I would say the Hawks have a better likelihood than the Raptors, though.
You're on crack. Are the Hawks even going to make the playoffs? I mean,
we'll
they're
see.
The play-in. The Raptors might not even have to play in the play-in.
Yeah. Well, only because star power alone is like so much in the playoffs. It matters
Fred
so much.
VanVleet is an all-star this year. Scotty Barnes looks like a future all-star, and Pascal Siakam has made all-stars. So
I guess it all depends what they can prove in the postseason. Got some stars. Because I know Trey. I know what I'm getting out of Trey in the postseason. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and what are you gonna get out of all the other guys? And it's not the same Hawks team as last year.
It's pretty much the same. Danilo. I mean, we'll see.
And they're barely making the playoffs, so it's not the same team, is what I'm saying. Like, their skill level and their output, like, it's not the same as what it was last year. They were weren't they like the 5th seed last year?
Yeah. I mean, they are very much the same personnel. What I think a coaching change, but it's Capella fell off a lot, and he was really what anchored their defense last time.
There you go.
So, I mean, but I think he can turn it. I'm not saying they're the dark horse. So I obviously pick my dark horse. I don't know.
No, sounds like you're defending the Hawks here, my guy.
I'm just saying I would put them over the Raptors with the dark horse ability to go further than you expect them to.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're saying that because you saw that last year, but I just think this is clearly not the same Hawks team as last year, even if it's the same players. Let's move on to a new dark horse. We're talking in the West here. Who is your dark horse to make the finals potentially?
So you're not going to like my dark horse in the West either. So, I mean, let's look at the contenders, obviously, again. Suns, Warriors, Mavs, Jazz. Those are the contenders that I see. Obviously, I left someone out there because I really don't think they're going to go far in the playoffs. It's me doubting the Grizzlies. However, they're my dark horse only because of how young they are, and I don't think they can do it in the playoffs. I don't think they can have that proof of concept.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, their second option is Desmond Bane, who's a great guy. We'll talk about him next week, but he's not. I mean, he's not a Devin Booker. He's not a Klay Thompson. He's not even as good as a Rudy Gobert. So I don't see them making it that far. However, they are the dark horse because the Warriors were young once. Their success reminds me a lot of a young Draymond, a young Klay, and a young Steph, and they were able to win a championship. So I think everything's against these guys with their playoff experience, but I think if they were win, it would be a surprise if they were to win.
No, I agree. That's a decent pick. I think your rankings of contenders is interesting because you looped my dark horse in with your contenders, which I have the Dallas Mavericks as a dark horse contender because they haven't necessarily proven that they can make it to the finals in the playoffs. It's obviously they made some roster changes this year. New head coach Jason Kidd. We didn't expect that to be a good hire, but so far they're proving us wrong, and they're having a fantastic season. They're on a roll lately at 7-3 in their last 10, and overall they're 47-29 now. They do hold the top 4 seed right now in the West, which, I think is a lot better than necessarily what I expected them to be. But I think they have the most potential to make it that far because mainly they have Luka. Spencer Dinwiddie's been great this season as well for them. And
yeah.
I think it's less, I less see them as a guarantee just because a lot of these guys haven't really proven in the postseason together quite yet. Luka's still really young, and I think I'm going to continue to call the Mavericks a dark horse till they make it to the conference finals at least.
Yeah, that's fine. I get that. I have the utmost faith in Luka, and that's why I have them solely on that contender list, even above the Jazz, because of the faith I have in Jason Kidd and Luka. And I know Luka's just incredible to play against. I mean, watching him is ridiculous. I saw what he did to the Clippers last year, and the year before, to the Rockets. But Luka alone is great. Obviously, Spencer Dinwiddie helps. I have a lot of faith in Jalen Brunson. I mean, when in a playoff environment, I expect nothing but the best for that guy. I mean, what he did for Villanova in the NCAA, granted, obviously a different tournament, but he was the leader on the court. He was the major reason why they won that championship, if not the biggest reason. So I have a lot of faith in that young kid. I think he's gonna earn his money in this playoffs, in this postseason. But I don't agree that they can. You could definitely convince me that they're a dark horse. They're on that line. The only reason I put them in front of the Jazz is because of the Jazz's lack of offensive star power. But
yeah, no, I mean the Mavericks have Luka, which just puts them over a lot of teams in terms of how high their ceiling can be, because we have no idea what Luka has in store for us next. He takes down Goliaths like he is David versus Goliath.
So is he better than Ja?
For sure. I mean, just look at their stat lines and you can see that. But you watch them play, and who has a bigger impact on their offense? It's Luka. You put Ja Morant on the Mavericks, and they'd probably be a playoff team, but as an 8 seed. Ja Morant is really good, but to be honest, pretty overrated right now.
Yeah, it's funny because he went from, in the same season, he's underrated, and I was just looking at people talking all this stuff. I'm like, he's still not the most elite playmaker. Also, he's not the best. He doesn't locked in on defense as people expect him to. He's a very athletic guy. Obviously, he's an offensive wizard, but I mean, there's still parts of it. He's really good at what he does.
No, he's
not
very
as versatile.
good. This isn't a hating on Ja Morant thing, but NBA rankings even had him, or maybe it was ESPN, I don't know, had him in 4th for the MVP right now. It's like, that is just not true.
I mean, that's kind of reminiscent
Luka
of
over him easily, DeMar over him easily, and Devin Booker over him easily.
I don't know if I would put Devin Booker over him, but I would put DeMar over him. Luka, I don't even think Luka's in that MVP race, just because of the up and downs this season they've had. Grizzlies have been consistently good. Bulls have been consistently good. Bucks, 76ers, that's kind of what that's a huge factor.
So do you only consider team performance for your MVP voting?
No, I mean, obviously that individually has to be good, but there's we've talked about, there's a lot of stuff. Luka obviously has done a lot, but they've struggled a lot, and it's just the consistency.
His numbers are significantly better than
the stats aren't everything.
They are the main thing for an MVP. You need that, and you need that to be the number one thing. After that, it's team success, which, as long as you're, and honestly, even the team success, that goes hand in hand versus your just team performance. Either your team's really good, and we're like, oh, we love that, or your team barely made the playoffs. Oh, but there's a lot of injuries, so it's like, oh, but he carried his team. He carried a bad team. So with that's what Luka is. He's got a way worse team than Memphis.
Yeah, he does.
So that matters. I mean, that matters a lot. Like, isn't that like the main reason that Jokic is going to win the MVP outside of his amazing stats? I mean, he's on the 6th seed right now.
Yeah, he's not my MVP though. That's
He's going to win MVP. If you just saw the straw poll of all the media members who vote for MVP, he was the leader right now as of, I think, the results came out yesterday. So
yeah, I think that criteria is really impressive. I don't personally think that criteria earns an MVP. I think the MVP is the best player who has the most impact on a very good team, like a guy like Giannis. I don't like Joel, but Joel has earned the nods he's gotten for MVP. What DeMar's done, we had a whole video about that. I think he's fallen off. I think Giannis has pulled up to my MVP in the last few weeks since that we've had that video. But
yeah, I think that's a fair pick. I think if I were to be able to vote, I'd probably vote him as well.
Yeah,
just because of the combination of team success and I mean, he might win the scoring title and he might win Defensive Player of the Year. He's a guy in contention for both of those. How can he not be MVP?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to make when a player like Giannis wins Defensive Player of the Year, and then he turns around and goes and averages 30 a game. How do you not make him MVP? Like, he's clearly the most valuable player. If he's
doing it on both ends, what's more valuable than that?
Yeah, that's why they introduced this idea, especially when James Harden won MVP of Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive, and then MVP.
Did James Harden propose that one?
No, it was during when James Harden won it, because so many people were like, he's not the MVP, but he was the best offensive player this year. And I'm all for that.
He was dog shit on defense. I think if you're gonna call it that, it would just needed to be called Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah. I would have Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and MVP. Yeah. But I think we're getting away from the point. Maybe that's another conversation, another topic for another time, because we can dive into that a lot.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll move on here. We'll talk about the play-in tournament, how it's good for small market teams. We can see right now a team who's not in a small market's getting bumped out. Your LA Lakers, for a small market, the San Antonio Spurs. And right above them, we've got the New Orleans Pelicans. And right above them, we've got the LA Clippers, who are not a small market, but they are the little brother of the Lakers. So kinda, Steve Ballmer owns them too. So they're not a small market. But above that is the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you've got 3 out of 4 teams in the play-in right now that are from small markets. In theory, I don't know. Is New Orleans a small market?
Yeah, New Orleans is a small market.
In like some way, I guess.
They're in the small market, whereas Stars aren't. Like, I can't wait to go to New Orleans. I need to get down to New Orleans. And obviously they had trouble trying to pair someone with Anthony Davis. So, I think the play-in is helping small markets. There's 2 sides of this, right? So I see there's a decrease. There's something that could hurt them, but I think ultimately it's going to help out the play-in tournament's ultimately going to help the small markets, because it's adding all this competitiveness. So when we were doing our research during the trade season, before the trade deadline, we were like, who could get traded? Who's willing to give a star away? And because it's play-in, teams that normally you would think are going to off-sell players, like the Clippers, the Hornets, the Wizards, normally I'd be like, oh yeah, they're going to offload their stars. But because of the play-in, because they're like, oh no, we can get into the playoffs still. They're not offloading their players. And that's 4 extra teams that add to the competitiveness. Well, really 2, because, from like 10 to 1, they still try to stay competitive and not trade away their stars.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it made a few teams competitive. We saw the Sacramento Kings tried to make the play-in or push for it with their trade. And the LA Clippers, they didn't sell off any major pieces. Hell, they even added Norman Powell. And the Minnesota Timberwolves were in a good position. They didn't really have to worry about that. But the New Orleans Pelicans, they traded for CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
Like, that was huge. And,
that was huge.
We're talking a couple teams that are like 10 games under 500, but still have the potential to make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. So, like, it just adds to it. And also, like, as a star, when you have a star on your team that you're like, I don't want them to trade away, I don't want them to leave, it adds like more of that because like we were just talking about, star power is a huge part of the playoffs. So when you have a guy like LaMelo and you're just say you're perpetually stuck in the play-in, he's gonna stay because he knows he can make the playoffs still, you know. So it's just more of a drive. And be like, hey man, we got this far. Like it's not just we're sitting in the lottery every year. You know, we still have a chance to go further than we actually do. And sometimes that's all a star needs. And
yeah, we're showing progress. You get them in a competitive atmosphere, and they're like, you know what? I'm here with my guys. We're improving. I feel like we've got an opportunity once we get there, and then they don't want to leave. Like guys just want to win. That's literally all they want.
Yeah, and I know, like, I feel like as an NBA player, it doesn't make as much difference once you make a top 4 seed. You know, I mean, obviously the first seed's great, but what's the difference between a second and a 4th seed in the eyes of an NBA star? Probably not that much, you know. So like
probably not that much, but
I mean, obviously it matters,
they do compare themselves with each other, where they're like, "Oh, we finished below this team. We're way better than those guys," and then they're super motivated to want to get ahead of them the next year.
Yeah, but so this plan is only motivating all the players and wants them to stick to that team, and it shows it's giving them that little success where suddenly they're like, make the plan, and suddenly Cat's not going to want to leave. Like. That's all we were talking about right before the season.
New Orleans Pelicans are making the play-in all of a sudden, and it's
without Zion.
Yeah. Without Zion, with him being injured all year, it's almost like you could make him feel bad if he ever even considers leaving. It's like, oh, dude, we like bought when you weren't injured. We're waiting for you to come back, and we still made the playoffs without you. You don't want to be here. Right. You know, we're great. Like, there's no reason to leave.
Exactly, and it gives that motivation for the front offices because it's hard a lot of times for front offices to get a gauge on what's happening with the teams. You know, that like what a front office thinks makes a team win isn't what actually makes a NBA team win. Not all the time. Obviously, there's that disconnect. Like look at some franchises. The Orlando Magic still have not figured that out. They thought they had it and they just didn't. But it really helps with that because they're like, oh, we made it, and the coaches are like, oh no, this is what I need. We're a winning team now, or like we're in the playoffs. Not just 500 makes a winning team, not just 8th seed makes a winning team now. Making that 10th, that 12th seed, that's enough for a lot of teams. And coaches are like, all right, we have a good team. Let me make some trades. Let me do all this. But in the same vein, there's a possible scenario where this doesn't help small markets, because in the same vein we were talking about all these trade candidates and thinking that they were competitive. Now they're going to hold on to their stars, and that's how small markets get that second star, get that third star, is through trades. So now that more people are less likely to trade away their big stars, it falls more on drafting. Like, who are we going to draft? Look at the Grizzlies. They obviously did a great job. However, the trade market is more constricted. Yeah, it does. Yeah, makes it a little more parity. But in like some small markets, like the Timberwolves, trade is a huge part of why they're good. Trades, and like obviously look at D'Lo, look at Pat Bev. They pulled in these guys that are huge for them. Jared Vanderbilt. 3 of their starters were not drafted by them, and I don't know
think
if
like the play-in tournament's gonna stop trades from happening.
I'm not saying it's not gonna stop trades. Those big stars, like we were just talking about. Who were we just talking about? The Jazz need that second star. How likely are they going to get a second star now that the star doesn't want out because he's seen success with the team he has, and now that the team is in the play-in, they're getting some success. They're less likely to trade away that big star. You know
I think you're still gonna have plenty of guys changing teams each year. Maybe less often at the trade deadline, but
yeah, that's the
even
thing,
this year you still had good trades at the deadline. So I think there's enough bad teams where the bad teams will have some talent to trade away.
Yeah, I was just saying this is a possibility that could come out of it. One thing that you kind of just alluded to is, maybe one more possible possibility is that they just trade stars for stars. You know what I mean? Where they're like, oh, it's just not a good fit, so we'll take your star, you take our star, because we both want to still compete. Because that's the huge reason why a lot of stars get traded, is because they're like, it's obviously not going to work. We're going to go back. We're going to start rebuilding. We're going to draft. So we don't want a good player back, like whomever, like a Tobias Harris. We want someone else, So now that they're staying competitive, they're like, maybe it's a new fit. Maybe we're just going to trade star for star and see what works out better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think definitely those types of trades could happen maybe more often. I think you saw that happened with the Kings and the Pacers, where it was kind of a retooling for the Kings, kind of a retooling in a way for the Pacers too. But I don't know if it's like that hard of a rebuild because Tyrese Halliburton is proven enough. Like, he's really young, but it's like you can tell what you're gonna continue to get from this guy. It wasn't like they were getting draft picks back.
Yeah, I do think they committed to a rebuild. How fast the rebuild will be is relative.
But did they really commit to it if they brought on Buddy Hield and kept Miles Turner and kept T.J. Warren?
Just because they don't
Malcolm Brogdon and extended him.
T.J. Warren is injured and his contract is up, so they probably couldn't have traded him. Malcolm Brogdon they couldn't have traded.
Because they extended him. So, do you want to address that part? Why a rebuilding team would have...
They extended him at the beginning of the season.
Point guard?
They thought they were going to be good at the beginning of the season. They thought at the beginning of the season they thought they were going to be good, so that's why they extended him. And Buddy Hield, they were shopping. They said they were open. They ended up keeping him, but they wanted to flip him. They were interested.
I think it's a retooling. They didn't rebuild. They drafted a 24-year-old Chris Duarte, and they could have traded Miles Turner, who they've dangled in rumors for years. They could have traded both him and Sabonis. They only traded Sabonis. Like, I don't... Who else did they even trade? How could it be a full rebuild if they traded one guy?
Well, obviously a lot of guys aren't playing right now. Brogdon's in and out.
They trade Karis LeVert too, I guess, but they only had him for like a year.
Still, he was starting shooting. Actually, he wasn't even starting for them. No, he's not starting for the Cavs now. That's it. That was kind of weird. Yeah. But I was more alluding to like the Wizards and Mavs, right? So you wouldn't have seen the Mavs trade away their star. You know, they were a better team, and you wouldn't see them. Say what you will, Kristaps was supposed to be their second star. He was supposed to be their second star, so it's kind of weird.
They traded a bust away, is what they did.
Yeah,
that was two teams trading guys that did not work out for them.
But that's my point. Like, you're gonna see two stars leave, get traded more often like that. More trades with that structure where they're like, all right, well, they'll fit better over here, rather than just give us young pieces. You know what I mean?
I certainly think that's possible. But like the top end stars, it's just probably never gonna happen that way. Like, you're not gonna trade Kevin Durant for
no, well, nobody's gonna trade Kevin Durant. That's not a good example. all
right, you're not gonna trade Jaylen Brown for Paul George.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happen. I mean, like, the minutia aside, I think it just depends on where the teams are at. You know, obviously neither of those teams are struggling. I mean, Clippers are struggling, but they're struggling within reason. You know, they're like, oh well, our two best players are out, so we're struggling and still making the play-in. So it's like whatever. You know what I mean? But I think it's more on the situation, like the Mavs. Like, maybe the Jazz will come into that where they're like, you know what, we're stuck in this area.
Like, would they trade Rudy Gobert?
Yeah, it's a possibility. Maybe they'd be like, give us Rudy Gobert, and we'll take maybe Kyrie Irving, but like not like that exact trade, but like that structure. Like, we'll take a guy like Bradley Beal.
I think it's like really hard to measure the value between stars like that.
Yeah, every team,
because like each team values their own guy more. Like, you call up the Jazz and say, hey, you know, we'll trade you Bam Adebayo and a first-round pick for Rudy Gobert, and they'd be like, you know, we like Bam Adebayo, and we could kick the can down a little bit more down the road if we did that, but Rudy Gobert is a better player and more consistent.
Yeah.
And they could just lock him into an extension. It's like, I don't know, wouldn't you just take the better player most times?
Yeah, like, I mean, look at the Rockets. Their best player is Christian Wood, so when you try to trade, if you tried to trade for Christian Wood, they'd be like, he's our best player, even though, like, he's obviously like a fourth, fifth option.
They're not just gonna give him
team.
up for nothing. Yeah. Like, it's like teams are probably hitting up the Rockets like, oh yeah, we're interested in Chris Wood. It's like, oh, well, how interested? And they're like, well, you know, we'll trade you like a role player and a first round pick. And it's like, yeah, it's not good enough. Like, no, we don't want more picks. We just spent 4 first round picks this last draft. We're hoping a couple of those guys pan out. We like these young players. You know, we don't want to just trade them away for more picks where let's be honest. Most picks in the NBA draft, especially after pick 10, they're busts. Almost every single one, they end up busting to some degree.
Yeah, at least not live up to the hype.
Yeah, at least, like get like 3-4 years of okay role player play out of them. Like, you're hoping any pick you make is going to turn into a starter or a just diamond in the rough somehow. Like, that's basically what draft picks are. They're all lottery picks, and you're just hoping, maybe this one will work out.
Yeah.
Like, you got to have a good scouting department, figure it out. And, these teams that can continuously draft well, that's who's really good. But, I mean, it'd be easy to say that, like, the Suns are one of those teams, but even they had their struggles. They spent a top 5 pick on Josh Jackson, a top 5 pick on Dragan Bender, and a top 6 pick on Marquise Chris. Like,
Bender,
it took them a long time to get to this point.
Yeah. But obviously, I think in the long run, this play-in tournament was a great idea. I think it's going to help out the small markets. I think it's going to help out the NBA as a whole. So I think it's turned out to be a really great idea.
Yeah, I was skeptical about the play-in tournament at first. I was like, I don't know about this. It's going to get like teams that are way under 500 into the playoffs, which to some degree we're still seeing that. But after seeing it, the last couple of years, it's just so fun. And the elimination style games is so great, and why get rid of that?
Exactly.
It's entertaining as hell.
For sure.
So we'll wrap it up here. Strictly Ball Business, episode 33.
34. Giannis.
34.
It's the Giannis
episode. So make sure you subscribe to us. We're thankful for everyone that does listen here. We've got more videos if you want to check out a comparison of Anthony Edwards to Michael Jordan. That's one of our favorites. And we've also got other young gems that we've or hidden gems that we've discovered throughout the So check it out. Hey guys, be sure to like and subscribe us. We're Strictly Ball Business. We strictly talk NBA. We love it. You love it. So let's get above it.